Hello, friends. Welcome back to Algebra. We're almost to the end of our series, and we've got two more concepts to cover, and then we'll be pretty much done. Once again, if you have any extra questions or if you'd like extra examples of a certain type of problem, you can always comment on one of the videos, and I can make an additional video. So let's get started with completing the square. Completing the square is one way to solve quadratic equations that are too hard to solve by factoring. Like this one here, 3x squared plus 4x minus 15 is not easily factorable, so we can't really do that. Completing the square is going to allow us to do that by using some tricky equation manipulation to make it actually solvable. Let's get started. All right, the first thing you're always going to do when you're completing the square is you're going to make sure that you have only the x variables on one side. So first things first, we're going to add 15 to both sides. This is going to make it so our x's are by itself. So we'll get 3x squared plus 4x equal to 15. So that's step one. The second step is to make sure that the coefficient in front of the x squared term is 1. To do that here, we're going to divide by 3 for each term so that we get our 1 coefficient. X squared plus 4/3 x equal to 5. Now here is where we're going to get a little tricky. The next thing we need to do is take 4/3 and multiply it by 1/2. Let's move over here. 4/3, and we're going to half it. Why are we doing this? Well, it's going to help us create a complete square, which is what we need. So if we do that, we're going to get 4/6, which is 2/3. Why did we need that? Well, here's what we can do. If we head back over to our problem here, we can add 2/3 to both sides. Sorry, 2/3 squared to both sides. So we'll do that. Over here, we'll get x squared plus 4/3 x plus 2/3 squared equal to 5 plus 2/3 squared. Now over here, that creates a complete square. This is something that's easily turned into a binomial, which is what we want. So let's do that real quick. We can turn this trinomial into an easy binomial, like this. Okay? If you actually did the foiling of this, that's what you'd get. X plus 2/3 squared. Okay, or you factored it. Now on this side, we need to set that equal to something. So we need to add 5 in this fraction. So let's do that real quick. We're going to have 2/3 squared, which is 4/9. And then if you add 4/9 to 5, you get 49/9. I did a little bit of the math ahead of time, so I know it's 49/9, but you'd have to actually do the math for that. So we can come down here and we can call this 49/9. Perfect. Now we're still trying to solve, right? The goal was to solve for x. So what we're going to do next is we're going to eliminate the squared. So we're going to do that by square rooting. So over here we get x plus 2/3. And over here we get plus or minus 7/3. So we have x plus 2/3 is equal to plus or minus 7/3. Now to solve the problem and isolate x, we're going to subtract 2/3 from both sides. And we have two answers here because of this square root, this plus or minus. We're going to have x equal to 7/3 minus 2/3, and x equal to negative 7/3 minus 2/3. So let's solve for our two answers. On the top one, we're going to get x is equal to 5/3. And on the bottom one, we'll get x is equal to negative 9/3, or, because it can be reduced, negative 3. So our two answers are 5/3 and negative 3. There we go, we've solved it. Like I said, completing the square is just some tricky manipulation of an equation to get an actual answer. Now, the first time you try this, it's going to be kind of difficult. I suggest, before you start doing these problems, writing down the steps so that you know, you write down the steps so you know what you're supposed to do. Let's do that right now. The first step is to isolate the x's. Okay? Step 2, make first coefficient 1. That's step 2. Step 3, multiply the x coefficient by 1/2. 4, add product squared to both sides. Board shaking a little bit. 5, simplify. 6, square root. 7, isolate x. 8, solve. 2 answers. So there you have it. That's our list of things you need to do. You isolate the x's, make your first coefficient 1, multiply the x coefficient by 1/2, add that product squared to both sides, simplify, square root, isolate x, solve, and you'll get 2 answers. This has been our video about completing the square. See you next time for our penultimate episode of Algebra. Adios, friends.